about that? It's time for a brand new segment here on The Story. I think you're going to like it a lot. We're calling it Digging for Old. It's the result of a partnership with the Oregon Historical Society as they celebrate 125 years of preserving Oregon history, while at the same time making it accessible to everyone. Here's how this segment's going to work. Digging for Old will be featured on Mondays on The Story, and after the show, it will always be available on the KGW YouTube channel, on our streaming service KGW Plus as well. The Oregon Historical Society has thousands of items in their care, from individual scraps of paper to the actual covered wagons that were used on the Oregon Trail. Some of them can be found inside their museum on Southwest Park Avenue in downtown Portland, but most of the collection is hidden away in a massive warehouse whose location is a bit of a secret. And yes, I have been there, so I know it's real, and eventually we'll be able to bring you footage from inside. How's that for a tease? But if you don't want to take a trip to the museum in downtown Portland, the Historical Society has an immense online collection that you can search whenever you want. Sometimes our stories will be about specific items in the collection, and then other times, like tonight, we're going to look at a few items that help tell a larger story about the history of Oregon. Let's explain our work, starting with how to access the online collection on your own.
The easiest way to get to the online collection is by going to the website museumcollection.ohs.org. From here, you can search through thousands of objects, many of them including photos and descriptions. For our first story, we searched a topic that has many of you fired up: tolls. In the search bar, we type TOLL, and it brings up 10 different objects. Let's click the first one, the eyeglasses with case, to show you what you can expect. The images are pretty cool on their own, but the context researchers have included for each object is where the real stories are stashed away. These glasses belong to one of the very first settlers of modern Oregon, named Philip Foster. Remember that name for later. But the line in the description that really caught our eye is the Mount Hood Toll Road along the Oregon Trail.
Yes, tonight we will focus on what was likely one of the very first tolls in this area, established way back in 1846. Remember, Oregon was not even a state then, just a territory. So for those of you who've told us that Oregon's unique for not having tolls and they should not be implemented, well, they've been here for at least 177 years. That's fact. That's history. This is the man who made it happen back in 1840s. His name is Samuel Kimborough Barlow. He and his family left the Midwest and hit the Oregon Trail in 1845. Some of the items they brought with them are actually in the Oregon Historical Society's collection, including Barlow's trunk and 2 potato mashers, of all things. At the time, the overland part of the Oregon Trail ended at the Dalles because Mount Hood and the Cascades just could not be crossed with covered wagons. From the Dalles, people would take a ferry down the Columbia River to Fort Vancouver and the ultimate destination of Oregon City. But when Barlow arrived in the Dalles, it was a logistical nightmare. I mean, imagine what the airport looks like when several flights are canceled. That was kind of what the Dalles looked like in the fall of 1845. There were only a few ferries charging ridiculously steep prices, and there was a long wait. And oh, by the way, there was not enough food in the Dalles for all those people who had already traveled hundreds of miles with the little food that they could haul themselves. So Barlow and a few other families decided, you know what, let's try and find a route for the covered wagon train around Mount Hood instead of waiting for that boat ride. Barlow is credited with a quote that goes something like, "God never made a mountain without some place to go over it or around it." So around Mount Hood they went. This is a rough map of the path that they took. The journey started in late September 1845, and they finally did arrive at a farm at Eagle Creek in the present-day Clackamas County in late December. The owner of that farm, Philip Foster, remember, the man whose eyeglasses we showed you earlier. The adventure was a 3-month grind through rough terrain, with at least one section of the trail requiring some work like this to keep the livestock and the wagons safe on the steep hills. But Barlow and the others proved that there was a way for wagon trains to make it to the Willamette Valley without needing a ferry on the Columbia River. So what did Barlow do next? Well, he asked Oregon's provisional government for permission to toll the trail that he had just taken, thinking, you know, I'll amass a fortune. And they said, sure. It was officially called the Mount Hood Toll Road, but was better known as Barlow Road. Barlow formed a partnership with Philip Foster, who financed the construction of the Barlow Road with about $4,000. It took less than a year for the one-way toll road to be completed, and it opened in late 1846. In fact, this document, signed by Samuel Barlow, still survives today. Dated September 1st, 1846, it reads, "Be it known that Philip Foster is authorized to receive the toll of all persons traveling on the road through the mountains as my partner." And that was basically a little contract to say that, yeah, Foster could collect these tolls, even though Barlow was the one who actually had permission from the government. Here are the prices that they charged: $5 for each wagon and 10 cents per head of livestock. Google tells me that $5, by the way, is the equivalent of $198 in today's money. So, you know, kind of a steep toll, but apparently worth it for lots of folks. In the first year, Barlow Road carried around 1,000 people and 150 wagons through its 5 toll gates. Nearly 1 in 4 immigrants to the Oregon area that year arrived using the toll road. But despite the road's use and the prices they were charging, the toll venture was not at all profitable. So when Barlow's contract from the provisional government expired in 1848, he and Foster dissolved their partnership, said goodbye, and someone else took over charging the tolls. It went through a variety of private owners over the next 70 years until a state senator named George Joseph and his wife deeded the road to the state of Oregon in 1919. The following year, the road was modernized for automobiles and finally became a two-way road. It was the first highway in Oregon west of the Cascades. Much of Barlow Road was later incorporated into the modern-day Highway 26, so remember that when you're driving it. Today, the section from Government Camp to Sandy generally follows the route of the original road. There are still places where hikers can see things like wagon ruts from the first road near Barlow Creek and Laurel Hill. This is a super old photo from the University of Oregon Library. Behind those folks on the wagons is the site of the last toll gate on the original road in the rhododendron area. A replica toll gate stands in its place today. With so much history baked into a single trail that became one of Oregon's first toll roads, Barlow Road was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1992. So, what do you think of one of Oregon's early tolls? We would also love to hear your thoughts, not only on that, but also on other pieces of history and our new segment, Digging for Old. Maybe you have some ideas for a future edition. Send them our way, will you? You always have so many great ideas. The email is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090.